Well, so how for the future format. Uh, Part one was talking about like deck types and how to decipher them, and you can pick up on whether or not those decks are worth it. Part two was talking about card design involving individual archetypes and seeing whether or not that archetype fits in that role. Now we're going to part three, and part three is going to be a little bit more specific. We're going to be talking about individual cards that you should be looking into and whether or not those cards are worth keeping an eye on. So, Magnificent Monsters is a really strong set. This set is to be debuted on September 4th, next week, by the time of this recording. Right now, by the time I'm recording this, we are currently in the World Championships. The World Championship Celebration event will be next week, soon after. And around that moment is when you will be seeing this set. Right after that, this set will be legal, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get a Forbidden Limited list very soon after. Before we talk about the individual cards in Magnificent Monsters, I picked a few exceptional ones to talk about because there are a lot of cards in this set. I kind of want to talk about a few reprints. A lot of people don't like this set just because of the quality behind the reprints that are in here. But there are some reprints that I think you should really keep an eye on. Gorgon of Zilthonia was not cheap. It was a $10 card prior to this set released. Sea Monster of Theseus was another expensive card where people were looking into for the Cool Toon strategy, at least to counter it. You got Secretarian Dragon, which was also like not super easy to get. Let's see a few other honorable mentions. LZ Asamino the White Forest, that is another very interesting one. Archmage Academic Arcane Arts Acropolis did not have a prior reprint to this. Medius the Pure was a little expensive for all copies, same with Crowley the Gifted Magistus. So these are two really welcomed reprints. If you saw my ban list prediction video, I think Lucias is coming off the list. I don't think this card should be a 2. It is a 1 in Master Duel, but Master Duel has very different hits involving Draco Tail, and Draco Tail actually has a slight edge in Master Duel above the other two formats. So those are a few very interesting ones to talk about. Another really important one to talk about is Sixth Sense. By the time of this recording, this card is currently forbidden in all regions. So, and you're probably thinking, well, Delinquent Duo is also forbidden. And we're not talking about Delinquent Duo. Delinquent Duo just had a reprint in the Rarity Collection 4, if I'm not mistaken, which was very little ago. This card hasn't had a reprint in 13 years. The last time we saw Sixth Sense was in, I think it was Joey's World, like one of the legendary sets. And it was back in 2013. This card is a little too slow for today's format. The fact that this is a trap card makes it not very enticing for every deck to play this card. We're not in a tempo format as we were back in the day. However, there is one archetype that benefits out of this card very, very significantly. I'll give you a few seconds to guess. If your guess is Paleozoic, it is not my number one choice. However, Paleozoic is probably the second best choice to consider. The number one choice for Sixth Sense is Rise Moon. This archetype is about to be released in the OCG next week, and it's going to be released for us in the TCG in December. So if Sixth Sense were to come off the list, this is probably the best archetype that can play that card. So Now that we are talking about that, let's talk about individual cards in the set as a whole, because there's a lot of very interesting ones. I'm not gonna cover every interesting card in this set. I'm going to talk about the ones that stood out to me the most and why it should stick out to you as well. In no particular order are some of these cards. Some cards that are more powerful than others will be one after another in this list. But yeah, so the first card on the list is Malefic Paradigm Shift. So for those who don't know what this card is, add to your hand or place face up on your field zone one Malefic World from your deck or graveyard, then special summon one Malefic monster from your deck or extra deck in defense position, ignoring its summoning conditions. Then, if your opponent controls a monster with 2500 or more attack, all face-up monsters they currently control lose 2500 attack until the end of this turn. So, the last part of this effect and the reason this card was interesting to me to begin with, you can activate this card from your hand by paying half your life points. So essentially what this card is a card that sets up your Malefic plays, but it is also a hand trap. This card is really strong and very interesting because Malefic has not been relevant in a long time. And I can tell you this right now, this is not going to make Malefic tier 1. However, some of these Malefic cards, they are really powerful. Like, they have a level 10 synchro that can just steal other synchros upon synchro summon. Like, they have Malefic Truth Dragon, which is a 5k beater. And this 5k beater can just destroy all monsters after, like, it attacks. You have Malefic Paradigm Dragon, a monster that can summon other synchro monsters like from your extra deck by cheating them out. You do have to have a bit of a setup for it, but you know, some of these monsters are really big, like, you know, 4k, 5k, 4k attack, and just having a trap card that can just summon them for free alongside the Malefic World, it's something I wouldn't scoff at. You can also play this like as a sub-engine by playing like the Paradox gear and the Parallel gear. Why am I bringing this up? Because there are no locks into any of this. The Parallel gear is only allowing you to synchro into like Malefic synchro monsters. But Malefic Parallel gear, being a tuner, can be relevant for a few things. And I'll show you one of the few things that I'm talking about. The next card on the list is Crystron Halki Fibrax Prism. So, if we talked about, let's talk about this card real quick. If you remember Crystron Halki Fibrax, that card is currently forbidden in all regions, and that card is probably never coming back. However, this is basically a retrain of it. So the materials are 2+ monsters, including a tuner. If this card is link summoned, you can special summon one tuner monster from your extra deck in defense position with a level less than or equal to the total level upon the level of monsters used as material. During your opponent's main or battle phase, quick effect, you can banish this card you control, special summon 3 Crystron tokens, but they cannot be tributed. You can only use each effect of Halki Fibrax Prism once per turn. So this, basically what this card is, this is reverse Halki Fibrax. Instead of you summoning a tuner monster from your main deck, you're summoning it from your extra deck. There's a few things to note. This does not negate the effect of whatever tuner you summon. So, like, you can summon Cool Tune Trackmaker with this, and it gets its effect. Another card you can summon with it is Dragoonity Knight Lewin. And why am I bringing up Dragoonity Knight Lewin? The reason I'm bringing up Dragoonity Knight Lewin specifically is because of a card that we already have in the TCG that has not seen a lot of play. And that card is Dragunity Lord Georgius. So Dragunity Lord Georgius is tied to Dragunity, which is my favorite archetype of all time, for those who did not know. But Dragunity as a whole is not really strong as an archetype. Georgius itself is a really, really strong card. And the materials for Georgius are 2+ monsters, including a tuner monster. And for those who don't know what Georgius does, this card can negate a spell or trap, by sending an equipped card you control. And while this card is equipped with a Dragunity card, your opponent cannot activate monsters in the graveyard. That is a really big deal. That makes this card a very strong floodgate against specific decks. There's a reason Abyss Dweller is in the Forbidden list. This is essentially Abyss Dweller with a spell trap negate equipped to it. Dragunity Knight Lewin can equip itself to a monster, a Dragunity monster, if this card is sent to the graveyard. Which means you can just summon your Lewin with Prism, link away Prism into Georgius, and then have the Lewin equipped to the Georgius. And remember when I talked about Paradigm Shift? Yeah, this card is an engine that can enable Prism. You know, just bringing it up there. You can also do Cool Tune plays with this, but remember, Cool Tune specifically locks you into tuners if you're not too careful. That being said, this card can also bridge into Cool Tune. So if you decide to play Cool Tune as an engine for other decks, Prism can just get you there by just summoning Trackmaker. Like, yeah, keep an eye on Prism. I think this card will be abused somehow, some way, some shape or form in some deck. If some other players are not gonna do it, best believe I will. Another monster to talk about is Ruler of the End World. I think this one doesn't need any introduction. If we go by OCG statistics, this card was very heavily played in the Mitsurugi deck. Pure Mitsurugi is the best deck that can utilize this card. Anthony Shu made a very interesting video talking about this card. I will post it in the description for those who are interested. He believes that this card is not going to save Pure Mitsurugi, and whether you agree or disagree, I think we can all collectively agree that this card is good in Mitsurugi variants. Another deck that you can see, you will probably see this card being played in, is in Rolad. Best believe there are Rolad variants that can play this card. And yeah, just keep an eye on this card. Best believe there are going to be some implications for it. Another monster is called Wind Unicorn Parallel, the Draco Slayer. This is a Draco Slayer monster, so it is tied to the Draco Slayer archetype. So essentially what this card is, upon Pendulum Summon, this card cannot be targeted or destroyed. As a quick effect, you can target a Pendulum monster card you control and one card your opponent controls and return them to the hand. So this card is not as good as its predecessor, which was Magic Spectre Unicorn Kirin. However, there are some implications involved in this card. And every Pendulum card that is going to be printed in the future is worth looking into, specifically because of the existence of Power Patron. Whether this card is good in Power Patron or not, I'm going to say this right now. This is a wind spellcaster monster. There are some nuances, there are some specifications for this card. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody comes up with something with this card in the future. Gagaga Girl Cell Phone Subtraction. So This card is one of the new Overframe cards. We are getting a lot of them in this set. What specifically this card does is, if your opponent special summons a monster from their extra deck, you can target one face of monster you control, special summon this card from your hand, then immediately after this effect resolves, XYZ summon only this card and the targeted monster. When you do, treat this card's level as the targeted monster. If this card is detached from an XYZ monster, to activate that monster's effect, you can change the attack of one face of monster your opponent controls to 0. So, I'm going to ask the question for you guys. Do you think this is a good card? The reason I'm bringing up this card is because this card is a deceptively good card. What do I mean by that? In paper, what this card does sounds great. It's a hand trap that XYZ summons. The practical applications behind this card are very, very short in comparison to other cards. And I'll explain. 1. You need to already control a monster. 2. Your opponent needs to summon from the extra deck. 3. The monster that you're trying to use has to stay on the field for this card to resolve. So, this is one of those cards that people will read and they'll deceptively think it's good. But in practicality, I think this card was a little too short in the design process. This card is a little too safe for what it wants to be doing. And I don't think it'll see any meta play. I wanted to bring it up in this video because it is one of those cards that reads like a good card, but it isn't really a good card. Stardust Dragon Victim Sanctuary. So this is another Overframe card. This is a generic synchro monster. It's level 8. And the card reads, when your opponent activates a card or effect in response to your card or effect's activation, you can tribute this card, negate the activation of your opponent's card or effect, and if you do, destroy that card. If a monster in your possession was tributed this turn, quick effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard. Special summon one Stardust Synchro monster from your extra deck. You can only use each effect of Victim Sanctuary once per turn and cannot activate more than one in the same chain. The reason they put the same chain part is because they don't want you to tribute this Victim Sanctuary and banish it in the same chain to summon another Stardust monster. So I don't think I have to explain it. This card is really good. This card is probably going to see a lot of meta play, specifically in the Elf Note strategy. Another strategy that can play this is probably going to be branded variants. So the reason this card is really powerful is because this card is very, very similar to Zalan, the Shackled Dragon. Zalan, the Shackled Dragon, is a little bit more specific than this card. But Zalan, I think, can cover more cards than this one. However, this one is still really good because even though it has the condition that it has to respond to a card that is responded to, that play is so common nowadays. This is one of those cards that forces your opponent to play properly. And what do I mean by that? Let's say, for example, you summon a monster. Let's say you summon an Elf Note monster, and your opponent has Imperm in their hand, but you have Victim Sanctuary on the field. If your opponent wants to play around your Elf Note monster, they're gonna have to shotgun that Imperm. They cannot wait for you to activate, otherwise you will just negate it with Victim Sanctuary. This card is also good against Roll-Ad, like Mind Shuffle, being able to bounce a monster to shuffle into another monster from the hand. Victim Sanctuary deals with that. Cards like Fallen and the Virtuous are very common to be chained like to other cards. Victim Sanctuary Dragon also deals with that. Yeah, like some of the best cards in the game at the moment are cards that are reactive as a chain to other cards. And Victim Sanctuary just forces that play style to be played with like more specific intention in mind. This is going to be a game warping synchro. And synchro decks that can already summon level 8 monsters like Branded and Elf Note, and Rolad variants that play Fallen White are probably going to play this card. Cyber's Contract Witch. I don't think I need to talk about this card too much. I've already discussed it in the channel at least twice. Once in my alertness video for Mitsurugi, and one in my Welcome to the Underground series for Malice. This card is really, really strong, and the decks that are already good in this current format, like Rolad, are just become even stronger because of this card. This card also enables older strategies that we haven't seen for a while, like for example, Yummy Mitsurugi. Any deck or any variant that just plays monotype and just have access to ritual as part of their engine will play this card like 100%. Favorite hero, Shining Flare Wingman. This card is always treated as an elemental hero card. If this card is special summoned from the extra deck, you can shuffle 5 monsters from your graveyard into your deck, then draw 2 cards, and if you do, this card gains 1000 attack. You can only use this effect once per turn. If this card destroys a monster by battle, inflict damage equal to that monster's original attack. This card is really strong for 2 specific reasons. One, the fusion materials that are needed for this card. If you are playing a fusion deck, this is basically a super poly target. If you're playing against the fusion deck, this is also a super poly target. This is one of the better super poly targets against fusion decks. So, invoked, branded, like Shadow, like just to mention like a few archetypes, this card is probably going to be a staple in some of those archetypes, like from moments to come. The fact that we have like a few meta contenders that are already playing fusion monsters already makes this card worth giving a second look. Another archetype that I think will benefit out of this card a lot are decks that can summon Mixosia. Take note, the Shuffle 5 Draw 2 effect is when it is summoned from the extra deck. So imagine you just summoning this in your opponent's turn with Mixosia, and you just shuffle 5 cards and then you just draw into hand traps. Or if you are going like, or if you're trying to win the grind game, you just summon this card and then all of a sudden you get some of your engine back like as resources and you draw 2 cards out of it. Part of Avarice is not good nowadays as an individual card, but when you have the utility of a monster that can do it, and that monster comes from the extra deck, that already makes this card very, very strong. Let's go with favorite hero, Flame Wingman. So this is not the same as this one. This is a lesser copy of it. Its materials are 2 monsters with the same type but different attributes. This card is always treated as an elemental hero card. When this card attack is declared involving this card with 2200 or more attack, and a monster with 2200 or more attack, you can make this card gain 1000, then special summon a level 4 or lower monster from your hand in defense position. If a monster was destroyed by battle this turn, you can fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field. Essentially, the purpose behind this card is for you to cheat out the Flame Wingman, the Flare Wingman. Basically, you're going to summon your monster as you're attacking, and then after you destroy your opponent's monster, you can just fuse into this one, and you just keep going. A very flavorful gimmick. I don't know if that gimmick is going to be good enough. However, the reason this card is relevant is because it requires 2 monsters of the same type and different attributes. What is the perfect example? Elf Note. Elf Note are all spellcasters with different attributes. So that's one perfect example of a deck you should be looking into. This is basically another super poly target. Yeah. Best believe, like, this card will see play. This card is basically reverse Garura. And Garura and Mud Dragon has seen a lot of play. This card is just another tool of versatility. And I don't think I need to explain how good super polymerization is nowadays. Will the second effect come up? Or the first effect? Maybe. But if you are playing a fusion deck, or you're playing a deck with super polymerization in it, and you have free space, this card is worth looking into. Astrograph Sorcerer, the Star Frost Magician. During your main phase, you can destroy this card. If you do, place one Pendulum monster whose Pendulum skill is 1 from your hand or deck in your Pendulum zone, except Astrograph Sorcerer, the Star Frost Magician. But it cannot activate its Pendulum effects this turn. You can only use each effect of Star Frost Magician once per turn. If a face-up monster card you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you special summon this card from your hand. Then you can special summon one of those destroyed monsters from your graveyard or face-up extra deck. During the main phase, quick effect, you can tribute this card. Then you can fusion summon one Dragon Fusion monster from your extra deck by shuffling its materials from your field and or face-up extra deck into the deck. This card's amazing. Like, what is the #1 deck that can play this card? It's probably going to be Power Patron. You can also play in Odd Eyes and like Arc V decks. I think that's going to be the deck that this card will be suited the most for. But Power Patrons destroy their own monsters. So the trigger condition of this card is super easy. And not only do you just summon this card, you just get to summon back the Power Patron that you destroyed. Unless it's called Vidolium. You cannot summon that one. Essentially, this is like a Pendulum extender. And I want you to take note into another detail. This is a level 7 Dark Spellcaster. So this is a material for Demod. And, you know, we'll talk about Demod more in a second. Like, there's going to be a lot of other relevant cards for it here in this set. But yeah, I think if you're playing any Pendulum strategy, you should consider this card. I think the older Astrograph is as good as this one. But yeah, don't sleep on this card. Dark Magician, the Pharaoh's Servant. I did say we were going to talk about more Demon cards. So this card's name becomes Dark Magician while on the field or graveyard. You can only use one of the following effects of Dark Magician, Pharaoh's Servant, once per turn, and only once that turn. If this card's in your hand, you can reveal one spell card in your hand, special summon this card, then you can set one spell trap that mentions Dark Magician from your deck. We will talk about a few of those later on. Quick effect, you can discard one spell card. Destroy all spell and trap your opponent controls. This card's really, really good. I wouldn't be surprised if you see this card in Roll-At piles. So, the #1 reason this card is really powerful is because its name is treated as Dark Magician. What does that mean? After you summon this card, not only is this card a material for Demod, this card is also a material for Gaze of Timaeus. It's also a card that you can use for specific other cards, like one card that we'll talk about in a moment. Just it having the Dark Magician name means a lot of things. Setting a card that mentions the Dark Magician is also very relevant. But Roll-At piles were already playing the Azamina engine because of their access to Demod. If something were to happen into the Azamina engine in the future, This is probably the best replacement engine for that, because this is a like incendiary summon. You do need to reveal a spell card, but getting a spell card in the like roulette deck is not that hard. And like this card can be dumped with Magician Souls, so if you play multiple copies of this card, you can just send it with it. This card, like setting a card that mentions the Dark Magician, means that in the pure Dark Magician deck, this card enables a lot of shenanigans. Just setting Dark Magical Circle, just setting the next card that I'm about to talk about. Yeah, keep an eye on this card. I think this card is probably one of, if not the most interesting monster out of the Magnificent Monsters set. Now let's talk about one of the special targets for the Dark Magician. That card is Dark Magical Curtain. So each player can special summon one Dark Spellcaster monster from their hand or deck, but neither player can activate their effects this turn. Then if you special summon the monster whose original name is Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl, you can add one spell trap that mentions the Dark Magician from your deck to your hand, except Dark Magical Curtain. You can only activate one Dark Magical Curtain per turn. This card is the best card in Magnificent Monsters. This card will be played in a lot of decks. I am going to make a separate video just talking about the applications of this card and decks that are going to be very, very relevant because of this card. But for now, in the context of the Dark Magician, I think this card is really good. If you summon the vanilla Dark Magician, this card is essentially a +1. Like, yeah. What Emergency Teleport used to be back in Teledad format is what this card is right now in 2026. This video is already too long as is, so again, I will leave an explanation behind this one and why this card is arguably the best card in the set in another video. This card deserves another video in itself. But yeah, this is probably the most sought after card, or it's going to probably be the most important card in Magnificent Monsters. And this card will see meta play, best believe. Let's talk about the last Dark Magician support card. That is Kuriboh Multiply. When your opponent activates a monster effect or an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect on the field or during damage calculation, when an opponent monster attacks, you can add to your hand or special summon one Dark Magician monster or one monster with 300 attack and defense from your deck or graveyard. Then you can change the opponent's monster's attack to 0. What is the purpose behind this card? What monsters have 300 attack and 200 defense? I think you can think about a few special ones, right? Yeah, I think this card is going to be a staple in Rolad and in Power Patron. The reason this card is going to be good in Power Patron is because every Power Patron level 10 monster and level 1 monster has 300 attack and 200 defense. So essentially what you're doing is you're going to summon this Kuriboh Multiply upon a monster effect, and then if your opponent activates any other monster effect, you're going to summon the other Power Patron. That's already a full setup for Power Patron on your next turn, if they don't do anything about the bodies. If you're playing Rolad, you're going to summon this card, and then you're going to add Griffo. And, you know, having 6 copies of Griffo is better than having 3 copies of Griffo. Rolad was already a meta contender in the OCG, and what made it really strong in the meta was this card. Rolad is essentially the second best deck in the TCG at the moment. And this card is going to improve that deck. Same way the Dark Magician Pharaoh and the Dark Magical Curtain will be played in that deck or strategy as well. We have a few cards left, and then we're going to wrap it up. One other card is Rainbow Bridge Bifrost. It's important that this card is not treated as a Rainbow Bridge card. They're putting that in there. That way you don't get to search this card with Crystal Beast monsters. Banish 3 level 10 or higher monsters from your extra deck, including a light synchro monster. Add 1 field spell from your deck to your hand. You can only activate 1 Rainbow Bridge Bifrost per turn. Very simple effect. It's essentially Pot of Prosperity mixed with Terraforming. You do have to specifically banish 3 level 10 synchros or level 10 or higher synchros, including a light synchro monster. But there are a couple of those already in the game. A few notable ones that I can just mention off the top of my head that are good examples are like the Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit Dragon, Centurion, like Legatia, and Elf Note June Pride. So yeah, in the OCG, this card is currently being played in the Toon strategy. Like, this card is a staple in that deck. But there are a lot of other decks that can benefit out of this card. One big example I can give you is Blitzclick. We already made a Blitzclick 101 video talking about this card. Back then, we kind of needed to wait for this card's release. Now this card is getting released next week, so best believe I will play this in Blitzclick. Synchro Emergency. And this is the last card that we're going to talk about today. If only your opponent controls a monster, you can activate this card from your hand, special summon from your hand, but negate its effects. 1 monster from your hand. Then, if your opponent controls a monster, special summon from the extra deck, you can special summon 1 synchro monster from your deck. Until the end of the next turn after this card resolves, you cannot special summon from the extra deck except synchro monsters. You can banish this card from your graveyard immediately after this effect resolves. Synchro summon 1 synchro monster. You can only activate 1 synchro emergency per turn. So, this is essentially a synchro summon in a hand trap. You do have to play synchro monsters for it. There are a lot of different synchro monsters you can think about, like that are in this set. Like one specific example is another card that comes out in the same set, which is Starjunk Synchron. However, let's talk about the decks that benefit out of this card the most. 2 decks that benefit out of this card are Cool Tune and Elf Note. And those 2 decks are already tier 1 contenders. Will those decks play this specific card in their extra? And in their main deck? And will they play synchron monsters in their main deck? Because, you have to be wary of this card if you're going to play it. The synchron monsters are essentially bricks. You don't want to open with them specifically. However, in the context of Cool Tune, in the context of Elf Note, there are other strategies that can play this card. Adamantipator is another example. And we will talk about Adamantipator when we talk about Beyond the Brave. Yeah. This card was overhyped, and then the hype behind this card got dropped again. I'm not going to hype the card too much. I am going to say this is a card worth looking into. because if they do hits to Elf Note and Cool Tune in the Forbidden Limited list, you might see this card patching up a bit of what they did to those archetypes. And even if that doesn't happen, best believe people will experiment with this card with those strategies. Yeah, this card is really, really powerful. There are a lot of jump scare tactics that can be made with this card. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you found this informative to your liking and understanding. Yeah, Magnificent Monsters is a game warping set. I did not talk about every single card in here. There are other cards that are probably worth talking about, like the Utopia XYZ, the Odd Eyes Pendulum. WP Fancy Ball is another honorable mention. But I figured the cards that I talked about are cards that will most likely see a lot of play. With the exception of Gaga Girl's Cell Phone Subtraction. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. I know this was quite a lengthy video, but I kind of want to bring awareness of these cards and how impactful and important these cards are, because those cards will be seeing play. And even if some of those cards don't see play, let's say for example you want to prepare for Genesis, or you want to like have a competitive edge against your opponent, I bet your opponent will not know what Malefic cards do if you activate Paradigm Shift. And imagine you're just playing a whole trap deck and you just play like the Paradigm Shift, you play Synchro Emergency as well, like, you know, and just play a lot of trap version, like trap based hand traps, and just play like the Angelic trap, for example, playing, for example, Dominus Impulse or Dominus Purge. Like, yeah, I will talk about this card in the future. I think this card actually has future applications. This card is very, very niche right now, but yeah. Until next time, keep practicing and keep dueling.